Hi, I'm Kristen, and this is the Simple Handmade Everyday Podcast, where I talk about living a creative, intentional life. I like to chat about quilting, knitting, what I'm reading and watching, and a little bit about keeping a cozy, organized home. I've got my cup of tea in hand, so let's settle in for a chat. This is episode 73. Welcome. How are you, friends? How are you this fine August day? I felt like I lied a little bit in that intro with my cup of tea, because what I really have today, my form of tea of the day, is kombucha, which is just fermented black tea, at least the way I make it. And it's a warm day here, so it seems like a better choice than hot tea. I have to say that my love for making kombucha ebbs and flows. And before we left on vacation, I decided I needed to process this, like gallon and a half that I had brewing. But I'd kind of left it for the last minute. And I've learned that, so usually with kombucha, I guess usually would be the right way to say it, is that you bottle it with a little bit of often with another flavor, like a little bit of juice or some blueberries or raspberries or lemon and ginger. Those are pretty common things. And then you let it sit for another few days to do a second fermentation so that bacteria and yeast start feeding on the additional sugar you have added into it, and it creates more carbonation. As a matter of fact, if you just want it plain, a lot of people put in just like a half a teaspoon of sugar to give the bacteria and yeast something to feed on. But and that's called the second fermentation, and that is usually how I make it. But I've learned that I really just like the taste of kombucha on the first fermentation, which just has a little bit of carbonation. So that's what I did, is I just bottled up 9 bottles of just kombucha straight out of the first fermentation. And you know what? I like it. I think my kids tend to like it when it's a little sweeter, but I'm a little bit more off sugar than that. So this is this kind of tartness just really hits the spot. So I got back from vacation about a week ago. Yeah, a week ago today. And oh my goodness, it was lovely. I definitely came back refreshed and re-energized. My extended family and I do this trip up to a lake house every other year. And it is just the most relaxing vacation. I guess my extended family, my brothers and my dad, we're a pretty low drama family. So we enjoy each other's company, and we just hang out at this lake house. The kids, now that my kids are older, it's so nice. They can just come and go as they please on the jet ski. Did a few, I guess really only one trip out in the boat for me. Because I'm not interested in tubing anymore, but we do what we call like the pleasure tour or the real estate tour, where my brother takes us around the perimeter of the lake, and so we can discuss all the different lake houses and which ones we like and which ones we don't and how we would change things, and and that is always super fun. So so just lots of reading and knitting and chatting and good food, and I was so happy that, all 3 of my kids were able to go. So it was wonderful. So it was a little bit of a harsh reality. Actually, it wasn't too bad to come back. I took Monday off. We came home Sunday. I firmly believe in bookending vacations, if at all possible, with a day to pack on one end and to get your life straightened out on the other. I can't imagine coming home at midnight on Sunday and having to work Monday the next day. So that was actually very nice to just have that day to do the laundry, wipe things down, go to the grocery store, all that kind of stuff. So that's just, it's been pretty easy living around here. We're getting to really the dog days of summer, and the garden is showing it. All the blooms are looking a little faded in the same way we all sort of feel, right? So I'm kind of starting to think about what the fall garden's going to look like, and our vegetable garden, it was okay, but not great. As a matter of fact, as it always is, I packed up about, a half dozen to a dozen tomatoes and gave them to a friend the day before we left, because the garden always comes right into, the biggest part of the harvest when we go on vacation. And since then, we've had like 2 tomatoes. So I've said it every year for like 3 years that if we don't get a decent garden this year that I'm going to give it vegetable gardening, and this really may be the year. I don't know. I'm really thinking about just converting that whole space to just a big old cut flower garden. So we'll see. It's that time of year. If you've got college-age kids are starting to go back to college, going back to school. The University of California system doesn't start until like mid to late September, so we still have another month with our college freshman bound kid, but it's it's a lot of goodbye parties for him, for his friends as they leave, and we've just started to get into diving into buying all those things that you need to take to college. So it's definitely bittersweet, but it is just kind of fun to spend that time with kid number 3. By this point, we really know what you're going to use and what you don't need on those college, bound to college checklists. So we've been kind of enjoying that. Well, before we get talking about quilting, I'd like to thank the Fat Quarter Shop for sponsoring the podcast. Fat Quarter Shop is a one-stop show for quilting fabrics and supplies for quilters around the world. They stock quilt shop quality fabrics, pre-cuts, quilt kits, patterns, notions, and even cross-stitch supplies. Enjoy an eternal spring with Vanessa Gertzen of Lella Boutique and her latest book, The Rose in Bloom Block of the Month. With 10 enchanting quilt blocks arranged into a floral-inspired setting, this quilt is a veritable garden party of wonder. The book comes out October 2021, but you can pre-order it now, and there's also kits available. I don't know if you know Lella Boutique Fabric. She is one of my very favorite fabric designers, and I think you will be so inspired by this book. You should definitely check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes. Let's talk some quilting. I bought a new quilt pattern and fabric, and I am super, super excited about it. The pattern is called Cabin Valley, and it is by a designer called Cotton and Joy. I will definitely put a link in the show notes. When I saw this pattern on Instagram, I mean, it totally stopped my scroll, and I just like, I love everything about this quilt. It's a modern log cabin design that's set on point. It's super clean and crisp, and she has, once I got the pattern, I realized she's kind of written it for 2 different ways of thinking about it. One of them is what she calls a modern ombre, and that's what the cover quilt is, and that's the fabric that I bought. All solids that just kind of does a very soft, rainbow ombre from navy through yellows and pinks and greens, and it's really, really pretty. It's hard to describe, but you should definitely check out the show notes. And there's an Etsy shop that has put together a kit for it called Simply Love Fabrics, and I definitely checked her out, and I did not end up buying the kit, but I did buy fabric from her since I already had purchased a bunch of background fabric from Fat Quarter Shop earlier this summer because I was tired of never having enough. So I bought 5 yards each of Moda Bella 97 and 98, which are, one's very white. I think that's might be 98, and then 97's a little bit more off-white. Kona Snow is also a favorite background of mine. It seems to go with everything. But anyway, so I had plenty of background. So the pattern calls for 9 fat quarters. And she was using the Riley Blake confetti solids. And so I ended up just buying a half yard of each of those 9. You just need a fat quarter, but I am trying to build my stash of solids. And so these are beautiful colors. I already liked them, so I figured, why not just have a little bit left over? So I placed that order yesterday, and I am hoping that it's going to be, I looked at the instructions. It's a pretty easy, it's log cabin. It's an easy piecing quilt. And I'm hoping this will help me get over what I have to just describe as aversion to machine quilting at the moment. It's crazy. I am doing all kinds of creative and crafty things, but not sitting down at my sewing machine. Now that I have my space back, I'm just not doing it. And so I just figured, you know what? I mean, I've done some improv quilting and, but I just can't kind of get going. And I just feel like I would like a project to do, start to finish. So, so I'm excited that will just kind of make an easy on-ramp for me. Like someone else has given me the dimensions, the colors, the patterns, everything. All I have to do is just sit down and sew, which I love. And I think I will be reminded of that. So I am very excited about that. The other thing that I've been doing, which is quilting adjacent, but not actually quilting yet, is, and I will do a full review of this class when I'm through it, but I am taking the Creative Spark class called Transform Your Scraps, the Treasure Box Block. It is by Judy Gautier, I think is how you say her name. She's written like maybe 3 books on scraps. I've reviewed them before here. If you buy that class from Creative Spark, I'll put a link in the show notes. You also get an ebook for Quilts for Scrap Lovers, and there is a quilt on the cover of that book that I want to make, and I definitely want to use my stash to do that. It is just beautiful. It's again, it's kind of like like each block is made with one color of scraps, and it's all about how you put it together. So that's the next quilt, I think, after this. Cabin Valley is I want to actually not just, do you do this? I'm sometimes guilty of watching classes, but then not actually doing the thing. That is the beauty of an in-person class, isn't it? Is that online you can just easily kind of watch it and not do it. So I am working my way through the improv class, and I am absolutely enjoying that, which is what is making me realize I need more solids. I need some more colors. So that'll be good. And so I'm going to work my way through that class and make that quilt, and I will keep you posted on that. But I'm enjoying it. Again, when C&T hires people to make these classes, they are absolute pros at this. And I met Judy Gautier one time at Quilt Market years ago when I got to go to promote Sew Illustrated, which was like 5 years ago now. And she is delightful, and she just so knows her stuff. She talks a lot about color in this class and color theory, which of course, I'm very interested in because I feel insecure about color. And so she has just done a fabulous job of breaking things down. She has certain sizes that she cuts scraps into so that they all work together. If you follow Bonnie Hunter's scrap system, you know all about that. She's really Judy here is more about 3 different sizes of squares. And I am very tempted. I think I may go buy those templates from C&T that will help you cut everything into those sizes, because I think it's just easier to do it that way. It seems like a reasonable investment if you're going to be using a lot of her patterns, which I think I will in the future. So anyways, I will keep you posted on that. I'm totally loving it. And the last quilting related thing I want to talk about is a book from C&T called Just One Charm Pack Quilts. This is by Cheryl Bricky. And this says, bust your pre-cut stash with 18 projects in 2 colorways. And I think this was such a smart book to write, because how often are you standing there in a quilt shop and they've got those beautiful, beautiful charm packs sitting right there, and your favorite designer has just come out with a new line and you don't really know what you want to do with it, but you know that you would like to have some of this fabric, right? I mean, I'm so guilty of this. So this is a fabulous resource to use those. If you just buy one and then that fabric, it was 5 years ago, right? So you're like, I can't get any more of this. So this is a solution. And oh man, I'm just absolutely digging these quilts. She's done a great job. So some of them are, so it's just with one charm pack. She also gives you suggestions for, if there's a piece that you don't really like in there, you can pull things out of your stash, go get some yardage if that line is still available. Most of them are obviously a little on the smaller side, but they also rely on a lot of background fabric to stretch the charm pack. So if you, for instance, had 2 charm packs, you could make more of a throw size quilt. I would also love what she's done here in that she has given alternate colorways. So she's made, the quilt for the pattern, but then she shows you another way to do it, often with more of a darker background fabric, which really changes the look of a quilt. But no, I think she's done a fabulous job, and I'm definitely hanging on to this one. For when you need a baby quilt or a table topper or just anything like that that's simple and quick and you don't really want to run to the store for fabric, whatever, you've got a charm pack, right? And that's why if you keep a big stash of background fabric on hand, you are always ready to sit down and make a quilt. When Minky used to live down the street from me, we used to go in together and buy background fabric by the bolt and then just cut it in half and we'd each take it. And at this point, I just kind of feel like maybe I should I just bought 5 yards each, but when those are done, I just might buy a bolt of each because it is so nice to know that you are never going to run out of background fabric. So anyways, just one charm pack quilts from Cheryl Brickey. Let's move on to knitting. If you have listened to this podcast for any length of time, you've probably realized that I'm either all about knitting or I'm not knitting at all. And that seems to be the way that it goes. My love for quilting is consistent. And even though I'm not doing a lot of machine quilting right now, I am still hand quilting. I didn't talk about that. But I'm either not knitting or I'm obsessed with knitting. So a little while ago, a few weeks ago, I started sock knitting. I was doing a lot of handwork. I was doing a lot of hand quilting. And I felt like I needed a different kind of motion for my hands and my wrists. They were starting to hurt. So I started knitting. And then I'm just like, oh my gosh, I love knitting. Why do I always forget that I love knitting? And so I think, and I've talked about on maybe probably the last podcast that I came across a woman called Crazy Sock Lady, and she has absolutely fabulous sock knitting tutorials. If you want to learn how to knit socks through all the different ways, DPNs, magic loop, 2 circulars, she has a tutorial for you. I even spent $2 for the pattern because my pattern that I had for my vanilla sock, which you wouldn't think I would need a pattern, but nothing stays in my head. I had kind of converted it for magic loop, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to pay $2 because somebody has done the work for me. And she has done such a thorough job. There's definitely some things that she's done differently. Some things I like, some things I don't, but I'm willing to absolutely try anything, for a little bit to see if I like it. But her instructions are so clear. Even there's these things that I'm always wondering when I'm knitting socks, when they have you slipping stitches or turning a heel. She's very specific, with things like, if you're a knitter, you'll understand this too, slip this stitch purlwise with the yarn in front or the yarn behind, or when you're when you're turning the heel, she gives you very specific instructions about what to do about when you get to the end. And so it's very good. So anyways, I highly recommend Crazy Sock Lady knitting, the pattern and the video tutorials. So when I bought the pattern, it will actually tell you at what point in her free. I mean, you don't have to buy the pattern. It's just the whole hour-and-a-half long video is on YouTube, but she will tell you, at 38 minutes and 4 seconds is where we start to turn the heel. And it's just really good to watch her do things. So anyways, loving that. But more importantly, I've buried the lead here, as I've started a wrap. It's called the Elementary Wrap. My friend Frances over at the Off Kilter Quilt texted me and said, I think I want to knit this as my, kind of fall knitting project. And it's a free pattern from Pearl Soho. I will put a link in the show notes. If you're in the Simple Everyday, what's the group called? Simple Handmade Everyday Facebook group. I've already shared it there, but it's a free pattern, and it's absolutely simple, almost mindless knitting. It's 120 stitches wide, which I've already forgotten, and I don't have the pattern in front of me how wide that's going to end up being. I think it's about like 20 inches or something, and it's like almost 80 inches long. So it's like super, it's just going to be this wonderful thing to wrap around your neck, use as a shawl, use as a scarf. I'm imagining myself taking it on an airplane as your little mini blanket kind of thing. And it's just stockinette. So if you do know anything about knitting, you know that if stockinette and if it's knitted flat, it's just straight knitting on one side and straight purling on the other. So it's just the perfect sort of mindless project. The only part that is not perfectly mindless is if you also are a knitter, you know that stockinette curls up on itself. If you have any sort of knitted sweater, you know that too, because knitted things are, like even factory knitted things are usually stockinette, and they kind of curl at the bottom. So they just do a little 3-stitch border on each side so that it'll lay flat. And oh my gosh, so I cast that on. I did not finish my sock. I'm like down the foot. I'm like almost done with that sock, but I was like, I can't wait. But I used the it's called oh gosh, now I don't have it in front of me. Quill linen yarn. It is the yarn they call for in this free pattern. It's fingerling weight yarn, which is like sock yarn, which it's thin, and it's knitted on a size 4 needle. So all this to say, it's a pretty fine gauge, and it's going to take forever to knit, and that doesn't matter because this is really mostly about process. I had a horrible time trying to figure out what color to pick here. And the yarn is like $18.50 a skein, and you need 3, so it's not a cheap knit. But it's so fun to use really quality yarn. And I actually treated myself to a pair of new needles just for this project, Addie Turbo Rockets, which are just super fine and slick and a pleasure to knit with. So when I was on vacation, I sat down with my daughter and said, okay, help me figure out what color. And, I have kind of a color palette that I use in my wardrobe so that everything goes together. And so I knew, and I'm fair, and my hair is, pretty much kind of whitish blonde-ish gray, which is kind of interesting for me. I'm getting used to makeup and clothes, and if things look a little bit different on me. So it was down to either a pink or a blue. And what I would consider my signature color is kind of a sky blue. It looks very good on me. But when I was looking at the yarn available, I was worried that what they had was a little bit too baby blue, and I didn't want that. They had a beautiful denim blue. And so my daughter told me, I think you should go with this blue. I talked to my sister-in-law. She also said that blue. But you know what? I didn't do it. I went with a darker pink. And I don't know, there was just, that's the thing about getting advice from people. It is a beautiful color, and I think it would really look really good on me. But I realized I was hesitant before I ordered it because it wasn't making my heart happy. And then I realized I have an infinity scarf that's not knitted, that's like, gauze or something, just fabric that I don't wear, that is very much kind of that denim blue. And I realized that I kind of struggle with it going with things. So that's when I was like, you know what? I have a blue scarf that I don't wear. That should tell me something. So I got this. It's called Rosewood Pink. It's kind of a darker pink. In my heavy jacket, I have a black wool pea coat, and then I've got more of a gray puffer jacket. So those are my 2 winter coats, and I think this pink's going to look really good with it. So anyways, I cast it on, and it's been totally fun knitting. I've been knitting so much, though, that my neck is starting to hurt, and my hands were hurting. I think I'm past that because I'm taking more breaks and stretching, but I realized that I can have some really bad posture sitting like kind of slumped on the couch with like watching a show or something with my head turned. Like even I just did that as I was talking to you, and I had a pain in my neck. So I think I need to work on some ergonomics if I'm really going to be in for the long haul on this knitting. So anyways, Frances is knitting this. My friend Vicky over at My Creative Corner 3 is knitting this, and I encourage you, if you would like a fun, long-term mindless knitting project, I'll put a link in the show notes. It's called the Elementary Wrap from Pearl Soho. It's free. The original version of this pattern was not with such a fine gauge of yarn, and so if that is a little intimidating to you, that yarn is so thin it's going to take forever, then you just use whatever yarn you want with appropriate sized needles and just knit along. It is just a big long stockinette scarf, so you can do whatever you want with it. But there's no formal knit along, but I'm going to be sharing my project. Frances is sharing her project. Vicky is. I encourage any of you to just pop in at any time into the Simple Handmade Everyday Facebook group, share what you're knitting, what you're sewing, even what you're cooking or reading or whatever. It's just a place to share share with, people of similar minds. Before we move on to books, I wanted to talk about the other creative endeavor that I had so much fun with, actually just last night, and that is Pottery with a Purpose. I talked about this before. I did a little unboxing on Instagram, but Pottery with a Purpose is a DIY pottery kit, and they sent me an air dry clay kit. And as kind of a date night activity last night, my husband and I sat down and we made little pinch pots, and we had so much fun. So in this kit, they send you quite a lot of clay. We can still do this a whole other time. Complete instructions on how to make a pinch pot, how to embellish it, other ideas. You don't have to make a pinch pot, but that is like, if you're just a beginner and want to do something easy and fun that's not too stressful, is a great starter project. What I really got a kick out of is they include some amazing tools. Like, these are tools that I feel like a real potter would use. 2 beautiful wooden tools to do embellishments, to poke holes. This other tool that has these wire loops on either end that you can, sort of engrave and embellish a project. And it comes with some kind of natural looking white paint and a paintbrush. So literally, it's a complete kit. So my husband and I sat down to do this, and I had seen on their Instagram page someone had made a candle holder. So I just made a simple pinch pot and then went through, poked a bunch of holes in it. My husband made a little bowl too, and then just kind of engraved a design on the side with kind of, triangles and wavy lines and stuff. So they are drying right now. We did this last night, and it said that to do the embellishment part, you should wait a little bit. So we made our pots, and then we just went over, watched one episode of Madam Secretary, turned it off, went back, and then started doing our embellishments. And so I'm going to let those dry for a couple days, and then we're going to paint them. And once they're all done, I will absolutely share a photo. But I talked about this kit before, and just with all the stuff happening around here, I hadn't gotten around to doing it. And I'm so glad I did. And we are definitely going to do this again with these the rest of this clay. So super fun. That's called Pottery with a Purpose. Let's move on to books. Well, between vacation, plane flights, and all the knitting I've been doing a lot of reading and listening to audiobooks. So I've definitely got some stuff to share here. The first one is a book I got for vacation, and it's called The Lost and Found Bookshop by Susan Wiggs. And I believe she does a quilting book as well. But this book was so fun. I absolutely loved it. It is about a woman who has a very good job up in wine country in Napa, Sonoma, and it pays really well, and she's getting promotions, but it is like a soulless job for her. And through a series of tragedies, she ends up inheriting a bookshop called the Lost and Found Bookshop, and she also starts caring for her elderly grandfather, and who has lived in that shop, it's a shop with an apartment above. He's lived there his entire life. So there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in that. And it's financially, it's in terrible shape, but luckily she's super good with numbers. And the whole story is really about how she finds herself and her love for reading and book selling and her connection with her mother and her grandfather, all through trying to save this bookshop that's in a historic building in San Francisco that unfortunately needs a lot of work, but there's not a lot of money. So it was a very fun read. I loved every moment of it. So I definitely recommend that. So again, that's The Lost and Found Bookshop by Susan Wiggs. I believe last episode I talked about listening to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I finished that. I wasn't sure I was going to like how it ended, but it turned out it was a great book, and it's a little bit of a knit book right now. Like, I think you're going to have a hard time getting it from the library, but it's worth the wait. Just put it on a list on Libby or Cloud Library or whatever you use. Definitely enjoyed that. And now I am listening to The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. Now, if you've listened to this for a while, not that I expect you to remember this, I've actually had this book for about 2 years. I have taken several runs at it and just not gotten anywhere. It is a physical book, like one of my kids gave it to me for Christmas, maybe 2.5 years ago now. And I just, honestly, I struggle with reading physical books these days. I like ebooks because I like to be able to read them at night without a light. And even though I know that blue light's not good for me. But so anyways, after several times of trying to read that book, and it's gotten really good reviews, and I love the author. Jojo Moyes is one of my favorite authors. So I just got the ebook, not the ebook, the audiobook. And I started it yesterday. I'm halfway done today. I did a lot of knitting yesterday and a lot of yard work this morning. And I also listened to audiobooks. I talked about this last time at 1.5 speed. And you can really get through some books that way. And it does not affect the way it sounds like I used to think. And it's got the same reader. I want to say, I wish I'd written this down. I think her name is Jill Whalen. She's the same narrator as the Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And I love her. She's a great reader. She does different kinds of voices and accents really well. So totally enjoying that. I was desperately trying to find books because I go through a lot of books on vacation. So I was going through Libby, trying to find things. And I do love Kristen Hanna, who's done The Nightingale and The Great Alone. She's got a new book out right now. I can't remember what it's called, but I have it requested all over the place. So in like 6 months, I will get that. But I just decided to pick a different one. And it's called Distant Shores. And I was really enjoying it, but my loan ran out. And, if someone else is waiting for it, they just take it away from you. So I'm very sad. But I've already re-requested it. So when that person's done, I'm going to get it right back. But it is about two friends. It's a contemporary novel. Two friends. I think it is about two friends, but one of them more specifically, who is hitting middle age and kind of realizing that she does not know what to do with herself. She's definitely hitting that midlife situation where she's been married for 25 years and her kids are away at college, and her whole life has been wrapped up in raising her family, and she is lost. And so she is joining this kind of a support group for, I forgot what it's called, but it's like women who have lost their passion. And that's kind of as far as I got. And I was all in. I'm like, this is going to be really fun. And then they took it away. So I'm definitely going to get that one back. I'll let you know how that pans out. But I really need to pace myself because the new Louise Penny book is coming out on August 24th. It's called The Madness of Crowds. It's the latest in the Inspector Gamache series. And I am so excited about that. Louise Penny is my favorite. And apparently she's also Hillary Rodham Clinton's favorite because in October, Louise Penny and Hillary Rodham Clinton have a book coming out together called State of Terror. It's some sort of a thriller involving the Secretary of State. And I don't even know exactly what it's all about, but I'm sure it's going to be wonderful because I love Louise Penny. I love Madam Secretary, and I love that kind of political thriller kind of thing. So that was a huge surprise when I went looking one day to find out when is the next Louise Penny going to come out. So anyways, that's called State of Terror, and I'm definitely going to be getting that. I usually do a little talking about TV shows at this point, but you know what? I am completely immersed in rewatching comfort shows right now, so there's nothing new to talk about. My husband and I are watching Madam Secretary. I'm watching a bunch of Midsummer Murders. I've watched a few episodes of McCloud's Daughters again, like all my favorites, just, because I'm doing a lot of knitting, but just not inspired to watch anything really new right now. We do have a list of movies that we'd like to watch with my college-bound son before he goes, and we knocked one of those off the other night. It's called Whiplash. It's from many years ago, and it is about a jazz drumming college student and his sadistic band leader. And we watched this many years ago with my older kids, and one of that son is a jazz guitar player, but my youngest son, who is a jazz drummer, he was too young to watch it, and he was probably off at a sleepover or something. And we've always said, oh, Ben needs to watch this when he gets older. because I really didn't want to put him off of drumming. But now that he's almost 19 and has many years of jazz drumming under his belt, I don't if you've never seen it, it's a very good movie, but it is hard to watch. It's about a kid who's at a music school that's modeled after Juilliard. It's in New York, and how he is trying to get himself into the top band there. It's called the studio band, and how the band director basically just messes with people's heads and really abuses them, emotionally and verbally abuses them in his own weird way to try to bring out the best in them, and how this kid gets under his thumb, and how he tries to get out, and how his dad's trying to help him get out from this. And anyways, it's quite good, but a little bit hard, well, definitely a lot hard to watch. I also wanted to mention a podcast that I'm listening to. It's a new podcast by Dara Thomason. We have done in the Simple Handmade Everyday Facebook group, we did a 5-day weight loss challenge with Dara about a year ago, and she now has a podcast called Weight Loss for Quilters. Now, on previous podcasts, I have recommended the Weight Loss for Busy Physicians podcast, saying it doesn't matter if you're not a doctor, she's really good. Well, she and Dara have basically gotten their what would you call it? Their certification as life coaches and weight loss coaches from the same place. So they're actually very much talking about the same types of things, which is that weight loss is really a mind game. It's really about managing your thoughts, managing your mind. Other words for this are cognitive behavioral therapy, thought work, just really trying to figure out, track back your results and your behaviors back to the thoughts that start it all. And Dara's very good. She gives really good examples. At this point, I think there's about 4 or 5 episodes, so definitely worth a listen. I was thinking, I've done Weight Watchers. I'm not doing it now, but I've done it in the past. And one of the things about going to a Weight Watchers meeting is just getting that, what we used to call free therapy. It's not free, you're paying for it. But the Weight Watchers leader that I had was actually a therapist, and she was so good. And I did feel like, okay, I'm just going for a group therapy session once a week. And I was thinking, I should treat Dara's podcast like that. Just that, every week, this is my once a week therapy session to get my head into the right place, for long-term weight loss. So check that out, Weight Loss for Quilters. And while we're on that subject, over in the Simple Handmade Everyday Facebook group, we're currently in the middle of a 10-day challenge. I talked about this last episode, that we can do hard things if we set our mind to it, but if we do it together, it makes it easier. And if we give each other some accountability, that just really helps. So I set up a 10-day challenge. It started on August 11th, and we'll go through the 20th. You can jump in anytime, does not matter. And then I think we will probably wait a little bit and do another one, maybe then do a 14-day challenge. Maybe we'll do a 30-day challenge in the fall, something like that. But it has been so fun to see the different things that people are challenging themselves to do. I am challenging myself to track my food. I'm always trying to lose weight, and tracking is key for me. I hate to do it, but I have been consistent in this, and I think I have found out why I think I should be losing weight, but I'm not when I actually write everything down. So revealing. Other people are challenging themselves to do some sort of self-care every day. Someone is trying to drink a certain amount of water. Other people have hand quilting or sewing goals in general. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour even of working on free motion quilting, all kinds of things like that. So it's like whatever you know you should be doing, but for whatever reason, you just can't get any traction on it. We're all doing that over together in the Facebook group. So if you want to get in on that, hop on board. We are happy to have you. All right, let's wrap this up with my final segment here, which is sometimes on homemaking and sometimes on productivity. And we're definitely a little more productivity focused today. I have spoken many times about my love for Organize 365 and the Sunday basket system, which I started doing about a year ago. And I've talked about it on the podcast many times. Basically, the Sunday basket is a way to, they bill it as a way to manage the paper in your life. And while that's true, and I wasn't sure that it was for me because I'm like, I'm very digital. I don't have a lot of paper, but it's more about managing all the random things in your life. So whether that is just keeping track of all the things, like for instance, my son's going away to college. I've got a little pocket folder for him that's got all, the lists of the things that we need to buy him and the vaccinations that he needs and the forms we need to fill out and all that kind of stuff. I have a /pocket for, which is just another name for a file folder that things don't fall out of clothes that I want to buy, of podcasts that I want to watch, books I want to read. Just it's a way to keep track of things. And the idea is that if anything that comes across your mind, something you want to buy, something you need to do, a bill you need to pay, something that you want to research, if it just comes into your mind, you just jot it on a piece of paper, throw it in your Sunday basket. And then on Sunday, and I actually do this on Saturday mornings, actually, you take it all out and you put it in groups of these are the things I need to do. This is stuff on the computer. These are errands I need to run. This is money stuff that I need to handle. These are things that I'm waiting for. So I'm just going to keep those things there till I get that rebate, I get that refund or whatever. And you just batch it. You just sit there for however long it takes. It doesn't really take me more than about 45 minutes to an hour to just go through everything I need to do, put everything on my calendar, and then I'm kind of organized and ready to go for the week, and little things do not fall through the cracks anymore. So anyways, that's the Sunday basket. But the same woman who has invented the Sunday basket has written several books, and I recently reviewed a book called The Paper Solution. And she talks about how we need to get rid of our filing cabinets and put things into binders because they are more portable, because they are a limited size. You really only keep the part that you need, like from a manual, for instance, like if you have a home organization binder, a home reference binder, if you have a manual, which you probably don't need at all because it's online, but if you want to keep it, just rip out the English part and throw away the other 7 languages that you don't need just to save space. So anyways, I loved this idea and I wanted to dip my toe into it. And so I reached out to them and they sent me the financial organizing binder. And I love this idea because during the pandemic, we realized we need to get our affairs in order. So my husband and I finally went to a lawyer. We got a trust and a will and all those things finally taken care of. But now that my kids are out of the house and my husband and I are we're going to be doing more traveling on our own, I have this little nagging thing in the back of my mind of what if something happens to us? And so sure, we've got that all taken care of, in terms of the living trust and the will, but how will the kids know basically where all the money is? We've got bank accounts in multiple places, investments in multiple places, life insurance in a couple places. How do people even really dig through all that and figure it out? Well, the financial organizing binder handles exactly that. It is in case something happens to you, this is the guide that somebody would need. So I started filling this out. And, in the book, The Paper Solution, Lisa Woodruff, the author, she talks about this, and you could build this yourself, but, and I kind of tried, but then I was like, you know what, I just really want to see all the things that a pro would put into a binder, and definitely there's some things in here that I would not have thought of including. So there are 5 sections to the binder. So first of all, it comes in a really nice D-ring binder. Super high quality. I was very surprised. You know how you can stretch out a binder when you just pull the rings? You can't even pull these rings open. You have to use the little lever, which is kind of funny. So there's a section called General Information. And that is just all the information about each member of your family, including all those things for instance, for my husband, it will have his driver's license number, his social security number. I mean, all those things that you need about people, but if they're not there to ask, how do you find this information out? If they're in the military, those sorts of numbers, passport numbers, where they keep their passports. For my kids, I can just say it's all in the safe. but health insurance information. But so I'm going to definitely fill this out. Well, I actually started this last night. This is one of those little projects that honestly I've been procrastinating a little. It's like I wanted to do it this summer, but it's not that fun, right? To gather all this information. So I decided I was going to tackle it fly lady style, 15 minutes a day. And so I've started doing that. And today, actually, the 15 minutes is I need to sit down with my husband and say, okay, you need to give me all the account numbers for all of the retirement accounts and life insurance accounts that are in your name. I'm going to write all this down. So there's information sheets on each person in your family. And like my kids, they will definitely need to know things like what are my parents' social security numbers, things like that. The second one is called current money, and this is where you would keep your bank account information and credit card. What are all your credit cards? She even has things like, if you want to track your gift cards, like, personally, because, you can lose track of those. But basically bank accounts, credit cards, things like that, where your money is now. The next section is called future money, and that is all about your retirement stuff. There's a section on inventory with a lot of good information on how to inventory things in your house, from photos to all of your things that you, like if you video recorded everything in your house for insurance purposes, and how to store that, how to scan your receipts so that, basically you don't need a lot of paperwork. And then there's a section about estate planning, which is just making sure that your executors have all the information they need. So anyways, it's a big project, but I'm totally up for it because my husband and I are going on a vacation, just the two of us. After we drop our last kid off at college, the next weekend we're going to go on vacation. I'm going to feel so much better if I can just say, okay, there's a financial binder on the shelf right next to the trust, and if anything happens to us, everything you need to know is right there. I know it's a little morbid, but you know what? I totally believe in being prepared, and I'm tired. I literally had make a will on the top of my to-do list for like 15 years. And I feel so good knowing that is taken care of. And that, like now that that's taken care of, that the kids could get everything that, they deserve. Hopefully we'll not need it. It's a whole bunch of work that we will not need, but that is being prepared. So anyways, so that's the financial organizing binder from Organize 365. I am super happy with it. I feel like it's worth having someone who does this as a business to know all the things that you should really be keeping track of, because she definitely thought of some things that I didn't. But if you want to know more about all the different binders, they sell them, but it's also all in the book, The Paper Solution. Okay, before I go, I did want to thank Lavender Violets for your review on Apple Podcast. I appreciate it, and I agree with you. We are kindred spirits. As I think a lot of us are here on this podcast, and that is the beauty of the internet, is that we can find people that have similar interests to us. So I completely appreciate that review. If you're feeling generous, any of you, review the podcast. It helps people to find it, and when they search for it, and it absolutely helps me. And that's about it for today. You can find me online at my blog, Simple Handmade Everyday, on Instagram at Kristen Esser, and please consider joining the Simple Handmade Everyday Facebook group so that we can keep the conversation growing. Have a great week.